At exactly 0740 hours, multiple classified movement orders were executed across U.S. naval and expeditionary units stationed throughout the Persian Gulf. What had previously been described as a deterrence posture was now beginning to look like something much more serious. Amphibious assault ships shifted position, carrier strike groups adjusted their defensive screens, and heavy transport aircraft began moving personnel and equipment across multiple forward operating bases. Inside encrypted military channels, one objective started appearing again and again: Kharg Island. Not because it is symbolic, but because it is essential. Kharg Island handles the overwhelming majority of Iran's oil exports and remains one of the most valuable pieces of infrastructure in the entire country. If you control Kharg Island, you control the pressure point of Iran's economy, and in a war scenario, that makes it one of the most dangerous targets anywhere in the region. What makes Kharg Island so important is not just what happens on the island itself, but where it is located. Sitting roughly 25 kilometers off Iran's southern coast, the island is surrounded by naturally deep waters that allow some of the largest oil tankers in the world to dock directly at its terminals. Most of Iran's coastline is too shallow for supertankers, which means Kharg has become the country's primary export hub by necessity. Massive pipelines connect oil fields across Iran directly to the island, where crude oil is stored in huge tank farms before being loaded onto tankers headed mostly toward China and other Asian markets. Analysts estimate that between 90 and 95% of Iran's total oil exports pass through Kharg Island, with roughly 1.5 million barrels leaving the island every single day. Some reports suggest the island's terminals are capable of handling as many as 8 or 9 supertankers at the same time. By 07:52 hours, satellite reconnaissance confirmed increased activity across multiple U.S. forward operating bases. Transport aircraft were arriving, heavy equipment was being unloaded, and rapid response units were moving closer to potential deployment zones. At this point, the buildup was no longer theoretical. Thousands of troops had already been repositioned closer to the Gulf, while additional forces arriving in the region appeared to be specialized for a very specific type of mission: amphibious assault, rapid airfield seizure, and urban combat operations. But what made this moment different was not just the buildup itself, it was the objective. Because taking Kharg Island would not only cripple Iran's economy, it would also give the United States a forward operating platform sitting just off the Iranian coast, a launch point for deeper operations, a base for aircraft, missiles, marines, and surveillance assets. And once that kind of foothold exists, the entire war changes. The military value of the island goes far beyond oil. Capturing Kharg would allow the United States to establish radar systems, drone launch sites, helicopter staging zones, and short-range missile positions within immediate distance of the Iranian mainland. Surveillance aircraft could monitor troop movements along the coast in real time. Naval patrols could dominate nearby shipping routes. Marines could use the island as a protected entry point for future raids or landings deeper inside Iran. In military terms, Kharg Island would become more than a target. It would become a bridgehead. By 0805 hours, Iranian command networks began responding. Signals intelligence reportedly intercepted a sharp increase in encrypted communications between IRGC naval units and coastal defense forces. Missile batteries along the Persian Gulf were placed on high alert. Fast attack boats began repositioning around key shipping lanes, and on Kharg Island itself, defensive preparations accelerated rapidly. Anti-air systems were repositioned, fortified positions were reinforced, and defensive perimeters were expanded around critical oil infrastructure. Tehran's message was becoming increasingly clear. Any attempt to seize the island would be treated as the beginning of a full-scale invasion. Iran's defensive advantage is geography. The Iranian mainland sits close enough to Kharg Island for missile systems, drones, artillery, and aircraft to strike the island continuously if fighting ever began. Even if U.S. forces succeeded in taking the island quickly, holding it would become an entirely different challenge. Every supply convoy, every helicopter flight, every naval resupply mission would have to move through waters covered by Iranian anti-ship missiles and drone surveillance. Iranian commanders would not necessarily need to retake the island immediately. They would simply need to make it too costly to hold. By 0817 hours inside the Pentagon, the real dilemma had started to take shape. Because militarily, taking Kharg Island offers enormous advantages. It could give the United States control over as much as 90% of Iran's oil export flow, place U.S. forces within immediate striking distance of mainland Iran, and create a staging area for follow-up operations deeper inland. But it would also cross a line that could not easily be reversed. Because once American boots land on that island, this is no longer a limited conflict. It becomes something much bigger. Military planners would likely view the opening hours of any assault as absolutely critical. By 0830 hours, planners were reportedly simulating the first 90 minutes of a possible operation. Phase 1 would begin with precision strikes targeting Iranian radar sites, missile launchers, coastal defense batteries, command and control infrastructure, and anti-air systems. The goal would not be total destruction. The goal would be paralysis, just enough to create a narrow window for U.S. forces to move in before Iran could organize a full response. Phase 2 would involve Marine expeditionary units launching directly from amphibious assault ships positioned in the Gulf. Supported by attack helicopters, naval gunfire, drones, and close air support, their mission would be simple: secure the beaches, eliminate immediate resistance, and establish a defensive perimeter around the island's key infrastructure. Oil terminals, communications centers, fuel depots, and docking facilities would likely become priority objectives. But Phase 3 is where the situation becomes far more dangerous. Because the moment the island is partially secured, Iranian forces on the mainland would almost certainly respond, and they would respond fast. By 0842 hours, war simulations projected a major escalation point. Within minutes of a confirmed U.S. landing, Iran could launch anti-ship ballistic missiles toward American vessels in the Gulf, deploy large-scale drone swarms, activate proxy forces across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, and strike U.S. military bases across the region. And perhaps most importantly, Iran could attempt to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That would not just be a military escalation. It would be a global economic shock. Roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz, making it one of the most important maritime choke points on the planet. Even minor disruptions in the region have historically caused immediate panic in energy markets. A full closure of the strait could send oil prices skyrocketing above $150 per barrel almost overnight. Shipping routes would be disrupted, insurance costs would explode, and countries around the world could suddenly face fuel shortages, inflation, and supply chain breakdowns. Then, at 0850 hours, a new layer of intelligence reportedly changed the entire picture. Intercepted discussions suggested that Kharg Island might not be the final objective. According to some reports, U.S. planners may also be considering follow-up operations targeting mainland infrastructure, including logistics hubs, missile depots, command centers, military airfields, and possibly even nuclear-related sites deeper inside Iran. If those reports are true, then Kharg Island is not the destination. It is the doorway. Capturing the island would allow the United States to project power directly against the Iranian mainland from a much closer position. It would shorten flight times, reduce dependence on distant bases, and create a permanent pressure point against Tehran. But it would also expose American troops to non-stop retaliation from the mainland, forcing the United States to either escalate further inland or risk losing control of the island entirely. By 09 hours, the timeline was compressing. Diplomatic channels were still active and public officials were still talking about negotiations. But on the ground and at sea, military preparations were moving in the opposite direction. Iran accused the United States of preparing for a covert ground invasion while publicly pretending to pursue diplomacy, a dual-track strategy, negotiations on the surface, preparation underneath. And that is when the real question begins, because taking an island is one thing. Holding it under constant missile attacks, drone swarms, naval harassment, and non-stop retaliation is something else entirely. If the United States takes Kharg Island, it does not just control oil, it controls the gateway to Iran. But in modern warfare, capturing territory is often the easy part. The hard part is surviving what comes next.